My name is Frank, and my partner is Hank. We were two truck drivers who met at a gas station one early morning and turned the road into love. Today we live in the mountains with our Rottweiler, Tom, taking care of our home and our feelings. After therapy and clear agreements, we remain steadfast as a couple, open to new experiences with Jack without losing our us. Before we continue, the uncut version is in the comments, along with the previous parts of this story. That night, when Jack left, there was a different silence between us, not heavy, just dense. Neither of us commented on what had happened. We sat down to dinner. The warm light from the kitchen fell on the table, the cutlery lightly scratching the porcelain, and the subtle smell of whiskey still seemed to float in the air. Tom settled down beside me, his gaze fixed, his ears attentive, his tongue sticking out in an almost comical expression, effortlessly breaking the tension. After dinner, we went to the sofa. The TV played in the background, images changing without meaning, and the bluish glow flickering across the walls. Hank laid his head on my lap. His hand rested on my knee, warm, calm, as if asking for time. We stayed like that for a few minutes, just listening to the house, the wind in the windows, the old creak of the wood. Then he slowly got up, eyes on mine, and asked, quietly but directly, "Honey, tell me, what did you think? Was it nice? Was it weird? How did you feel?" I swallowed my answer before speaking, choosing my words carefully. "Well, handsome, I liked it. I didn't think it would be so good. For me, it was perfect. There was no competition, no moment when one of us was left out. It was just right. And you, what did you think?" He nodded, a half smile on his lips, his shoulders releasing tension I hadn't even noticed. "Honey, I felt the same way. It was really good, wasn't it?" It felt like the three of us were on the same wavelength. Tom sighed on the floor, as if giving a final, "Okay," and the house returned to its simple, calm rhythm, while the television continued to say nothing. After that conversation, I felt a quiet relief. I confess I feared it would drive us apart, but the opposite happened. I was left with the distinct feeling that we were closer, more aligned, choosing the same side. Hank added, his voice low and firm, "Honey, I want to thank you for facing this with me. You know that if you didn't accept it, I would understand, okay? You are the most important thing to me in this world, and I'm glad you liked it." His hand squeezed my leg lightly, his gaze warm and confident, and for a second, the whole house seemed to fit into that gesture. I leaned in, touched my mouth to his in a calm kiss, long enough to say the rest. "I love you too," I whispered, feeling calm return as the TV played softly and the smell of wood still lingered in the room. 2 days later, my cell phone vibrated. It was Jack. Message, "Good afternoon, my lovelies. How are you? I wanted to thank you for welcoming me so warmly and say that I enjoyed meeting you. I hope we can do it again, and that you enjoyed it as much as I did." I picked up my phone and said, "Honey," Jack sent a message. "The father waiters is why'll be know the way." Hank turned his face immediately, curious. I read it aloud and he said, "Reply, love." "What should I say?" I asked. He smiled. "Send this. Hi, Jack. We're fine, thank you. How are you? We're glad you enjoyed it, and we enjoyed it too. We'll definitely do it again. Hugs and take care." I typed the message and sent it. Almost immediately, the screen flashed again. A heart emoji. Hank pulled me into a tight hug. "Honey, he liked us." I smiled. "How could he not? Look at us. We're two big, handsome bears." He laughed, resting his forehead against mine. "You're right. Abby." The days went by, and sometimes Jack would send a good morning or good night message. Every time the screen lit up, the memory of our trail came back in full, and just reading a line from him was enough to make me feel warm and want to see him again. It was a Saturday. Hank looked at me and said, straight out, "Honey, what do you think about inviting Jack over today? We'll have a barbecue. He can sleep over and go back on Sunday." "I think that's a good idea, honey. Invite him," I replied. He picked up his cell phone, thumb already poised on the keyboard, and sent, "Good morning, Jack. How are you? Frank and I are inviting you to come over today. We're having a barbecue. If you don't have any plans, it would be great to have you with us." A few minutes later, the screen lit up with the reply. "Hello, my beautiful people. I'm fine. How are you? What a nice surprise. I was thinking about you today. I'll definitely accept the invitation. I'll be there tonight. Hank typed back, a smile still on his face. Great. Come sleep over. The just of the div the most of the bintions of the duations. Jack liked the message and said nothing more. The silence in the chat hung like a confirmed yes, while we already imagined the charcoal crackling, the grill lit, and the night slowly falling. It was late afternoon when we started to get everything ready. Hank checked the grill in the backyard. He removed the grate, scraped off the residue with a wire brush, wiped it with a dry cloth, and put it back. I went to the kitchen to gather what was missing. Sharp knives, cutting boards, bowls, tongs, and skewers. We made a quick trip to the city market. We picked up picanha, sausage, boneless thighs and drumsticks, garlic bread, coalho cheese, and an extra bag of charcoal. On the way back, Tom spun around us, tail wagging, sniffing the bags like a quality control inspector. I left the meat open on large platters. Hank organized everything in order of grilling. The sausage was last, easy to put on and take off the grill. I put the coalho cheese on the skewers while the garlic bread rested wrapped in aluminum foil. In the backyard, Hank set up the grill, waiting for Jack to arrive. The crackling of the charcoal marked the backdrop, and the smoke rose cleanly, smelling like Saturday. The playlist came out softly from the speaker light rock, some old favorites we love. Tom lay down next to the grill, his eyes attentive to the movement of the tongs, as if he understood the ritual. It didn't take long for us to hear the roar of the truck's engine. It parked in front of the house, and Tom, our dog, ran to see who it was. Hank and I followed. Jack was already outside, waiting, so Tom wouldn't jump on him. "Tom, get inside," Hank said. Tom lowered his head, a little annoyed, and went inside. Jack got out of the truck carrying a bottle of wine in his hand. He came over to us, gave me a firm hug, hugged Hank, and said, "Thanks for the invitation." He handed over the wine. "Thanks for the wine," I replied. "Let's go inside." We walked through the living room. Tom was lying on the rug. He got up, sniffed Jack's pant leg, and lay back down. I left the wine in the kitchen, and we headed for the barbecue. The air in the backyard was warm, with the smell of burning charcoal and a low crackling sound filling the background. "Want to change clothes, Jack? Put on something more comfortable?" Hank asked. "No need, thanks," he replied, at ease. I went to the refrigerator, grabbed 3 beers, and handed one to Jack and another to Hank. The caps popped almost simultaneously. "Cheers," I said, raising the bottle. "Cheers," they repeated. We started drinking and joking, chatting away, while Hank put the meat on the grill. The smoke rose thinly. The late afternoon light turned the yard golden, and Tom watched everything from the ground, his ears alert. The grill sizzled softly, and the crackling of the charcoal filled the backyard. We were chatting freely, soft music playing, bottles tapping on the wooden table when Jack dropped the first bombshell. "If I praise this barbecue too much, will you invite me over more often? Or can I just leave a toothbrush here?" he said with a half smile. Hank laughed, turning the tongs. "Hold on, cop. First you have to pass the doneness test," he said, looking sideways. "Not raw, not burnt. I like it just right," Jack replied, looking from me to Hank. "Just like us." Tom pricked up his ears, came close to the table, and rested his chin on my knee, asking for a treat. I petted him and replied, "If you keep talking like that, Tom will get jealous." "Don't worry," said Jack, giving Tom a piece of bread, which he happily gobbled up. "I know how to share attention." Hank opened the lid of the barbecue, and the delicious smell wafted over. "The first batch is ready," he announced. "Bring the plates, Frank." When I returned, Jack leaned his shoulder against mine for a second, as if testing the space. "You two together have something. How can I put it? Good radio chemistry. We come together and tune in easily." "It depends on the day," I replied jokingly. "Sometimes there's static." "If there is, I'll adjust the antenna," he replied lightly, winking. We served the first pieces. Jack took a bite, nodded, and raised the bottle in a short toast. "To the perfect point of the meat and the night, and to the perfect company," added Hank, tapping his bottle against Jack's. Tom lay back again, satisfied, as the smoke rose thinly. "Between bites," Jack added, "just a logistical question. Where am I going to sleep? In the guest room or Shall I find out later? Hank gave a short laugh, looking at me before answering. We'll decide after dessert. Sounds good, said Jack, steering the conversation back to football, the road, life. But the subtext remained there, hot, like embers. Jack asked, "Do you have any whiskey?" Hank replied without thinking, "Yes, we do." "Go get it, honey." I went to the cupboard, grabbed the bottle, and left the glasses on the counter. We poured and toasted. The alcohol loosened up, easy laughs, silly comments, everything light. When the barbecue was over, we were in the kitchen, water running in the sink, dishes clattering, the counter wet with splashes. Hank and I were passing the dishes when Jack came up behind us, calm steps, low voice. "I missed you guys." He hugged us from behind, his chest against my back, his chin close to my shoulder, his warm breath next to my ear. I felt butterflies in my stomach just from the way he spoke so close to me. We turned at the same time, face to face. Jack kissed me directly, firmly, and in an instant, the whole room seemed too small for our desire to be together. Hank smiled, came closer, and said good-humoredly, "I missed you guys a lot. Shall we go to the bedroom to talk calmly?" We stumbled into the hallway, the rush burning our skin. I turned on the bedroom light, and it cast a yellowish glow over the messy bed, the lamp casting shadows on the walls. We exchanged kisses, low laughter, and caresses. The rest of the house disappeared. From then on, we gave ourselves over to each other, just love and intimacy. When our breathing calmed down and our heads returned to normal, the three of us lay there, embracing, in silence for a few minutes. Jack smiled, still panting, and whispered, "That was intense, and very special." Thanks for watching." Hank leaned his forehead against Jack's and replied tenderly, "You're special to us." Thanks for watching, and with then that, I kissed Jack again, slowly this time, a kiss of gratitude. We lay there, the three of us, listening to each other's hearts find the same rhythm. I looked at Hank over Jack's shoulder and smiled. He smiled back, knowing. "The three of us complete each other," said Hank. "Yes, we complete each other," confirmed Jack, half asleep. "I think we need a shower," suggested Jack, laughing. "Good idea," said Hank. The three of us went to the bathroom. The hot water began to fall heavily on the shower stall, spreading steam across the glass. We took a simple shower, talking quietly, exchanging light kisses and laughter, as if celebrating a memorable night, nothing but affection, care, and a light-hearted atmosphere between us. Then we dried off and went back to the bedroom. Hank fell into bed first, made room between the sheets, and looked at Jack with a smile. "Remember when you asked where you were going to sleep?" he said, his voice already soft. "Stay with us. Do you want to be in the middle or on the side?" Jack laughed, with that mischievous look we already knew, and replied, "In the middle, of course. I like being close to both of you." We all lay down, very close together, under the same sheet. First, we exchanged calm kisses, sometimes Hank and I, sometimes Jack and I, sometimes Jack pulling us both at once, just affection. That good tiredness after a day that made sense. When sleep began to weigh heavily, Hank put his arm over Jack. I kissed his forehead once more and, in unison, as if it were a pact, we said together, "Good night." The silence of the mountain filled everything again. Now, the room carried only the warmth of an important moment, kept with respect and love. It was our surrender. In the middle of the night, I woke up with a warm feeling. I slowly opened my eyes and saw Jack lying between us, smiling even in the dark. He came closer to me, brushed his lips against my shoulder, and whispered softly, "Let's play, handsome." We kissed in silence, the room still shrouded in darkness. Hank, next to me, began to stir and soon woke up too, joining in the moment. Then the three of us hugged, exchanging kisses, shy laughter, and caresses. It was there, in the silence of the early morning, that we surrendered ourselves again, just love and intimacy. Later, still entwined, we went to the bathroom. The hot water from the shower fell heavily, spreading steam throughout the stall. We got in together, laughing, pushing each other lightly against the tiles. The shower became a celebration. Hands that met, kisses exchanged, knowing glances. Nothing but affection, lightness, and the warmth of care. We returned to the bedroom, still smiling. The bed was messy, But it didn't matter. We lay under the same sheet, our bodies pressed together, an embrace that seemed to promise that nothing would separate us. Hank snuggled up behind me and wrapped his strong arms around me. He kissed my neck slowly, gently. I turned my face and reached for his mouth in a calm, affectionate kiss. Jack, beside us, was already asleep with a peaceful smile. In the warmth of the embrace, I closed my eyes. Hank's breathing became steady behind me, and soon the three of us fell asleep together, lulled by the peace that came after surrender. The sun slowly crept through the cracks in the curtain, streaking the wall with golden tones. I opened my eyes slowly, still feeling heavy and relaxed after the previous night. Hank remained glued to me. Just as we had fallen asleep, his arm firmly around my waist, his slow breathing tickling my neck. On the other side, Jack slept on his back, his broad chest rising and falling at a steady pace. His messy hair and relaxed expression showed how exhausted he was. I smiled to myself, remembering how much that encounter had marked us. I stayed there for a few minutes, in silence, just listening to the soft sounds of the house, the wind blowing through the trees outside, the creaking of old wood, and Tom's peaceful snoring in the corner of the room. Carefully, I got up and went to the kitchen. The air was fresh, and the morning light illuminated the simple table. I put water on to boil, made coffee, and cut a few slices of bread. Soon the smell spread through the house, bringing that perfect contrast. After the intensity of the night, a simple and calm start to the day. Shortly after putting the coffee on the table, I felt Hank approaching from behind. He wrapped me in a firm embrace, his warm body pressed against mine, and kissed my neck lightly before speaking softly, his voice still hoarse with sleep. "Good morning, my love, my life. Did you sleep well?" "Any 10. I turned in his arms, smiling, and replied, looking into his eyes. "Good morning, my handsome. I slept well. And you?" He ran his hand over my face and said, in that sweet way that only he had, "I slept well, love." We kissed slowly, a calm kiss full of affection, different from the intensity of the night before, but with the same strength. There, between the smell of fresh coffee and the warmth of his embrace, the day was off to a good start. While Hank and I were still in the kitchen, Jack appeared at the door, his hair messy and that smile on his face. He opened his arms and said, "Good morning, my two beautiful bears." We both couldn't hold back our laughter. In unison we replied, "Good morning, you rascal." We sat at the table, the three of us side by side, sharing bread, coffee, and knowing glances. The atmosphere was light, intimate, a perfect contrast to the intensity of the night before. Between sips and quiet laughter, it became clear that this morning was not just the next day. It was the beginning of something that already united us in a different way. After breakfast, we hung out in the living room for a while, until Jack suggested going out for a bit. Soon the idea of fishing came up, simple, but perfect for that unhurried Saturday. We gathered a few things: rods, boxes of hooks, buckets, a bottle of whiskey to warm up the cold mountain morning, and some sandwiches wrapped in paper. Tom, clever as ever, was already running around the yard wagging his tail, knowing he would be coming along. We walked to the river that cut through the lower part of the property. The air was fresh, smelling of wet grass and running water. The sun was beginning to rise, reflecting on the water like tiny sparks. The sound of the river mingled with the birdsong, and for a few minutes no one said anything. It was as if silence was the best way to enjoy the moment. Hank was responsible for preparing the lines. His steady hands arranged hooks and bait with natural calm. Jack sat down next to me on the edge of the ravine, took off his flip-flops, and let his feet touch the cold water, laughing at the sensation. I stayed in the middle, watching the two of them, feeling that rare peace. After so much intensity, the day now seemed to be made of complicity. From time to time, their eyes would meet quickly, conspiratorially, laden with fresh memories. But there was no rush. There, with the river flowing before us and Tom lying on the grass, it seemed that life had found a perfect balance. We started fishing, laughing and teasing each other, turning it into a contest. Every fish we caught became a joke. Hank bragged about the size of his. I retorted that the next one would be bigger, and Jack stood in the middle, cheering and joking. The sun rose slowly, the river flowed serenely, and the atmosphere was light, as if nothing else existed beyond that morning. Jack opened the bottle of whiskey he had brought, took a sip straight from the bottle, and laughed after the first sip, letting the drink burn his throat. Over time, he became more serious, less playful. His gaze, which had been shifting between the fishing rod and the water, now sought ours. He rested his elbows on his knees, held the bottle in his hands, and sighed. I need to say something. Last night wasn't just fun for me. You two made me feel something I'd never felt before. Hank slowly turned his face. I remained silent, and Jack continued, his face slightly flushed, perhaps from the whiskey, perhaps from the courage he lacked. It's like I've found a place where I can be myself, without fear. He laughed awkwardly, lowered his eyes, and added in a whisper, I'm sorry. I'm dreaming, right? The sound of the water filled the silence. Hank dropped his rod, put his arm around his shoulder, pulling him against his chest. I approached, placed my hand on his. The three of us stood there, watching the river flow, as if that moment were confirmation that there was no turning back. I looked at him firmly and said calmly, No, handsome, you're not dreaming. I love seeing this affectionate side of you, and I'm sure Hank is also enjoying seeing you open up like this. I paused, took a deep breath, and continued. When we decided to date other people, we had an agreement. Never repeat with the same guy. But look, guess what? We broke that rule on the very first try, and it wasn't by chance. Plus, I smiled slightly, staring into his eyes, which were moist, shining with emotion. You're an incredible guy. You moved us. It wasn't just desire, Jack. It was something bigger. Hank confirmed the gesture with a firm squeeze on his shoulder and kissed his head, without saying a word. The silence of the river filled the space again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was filled with the certainty that there was something there that was turning into more than just a simple adventure. Jack took a deep breath, looking first at me and then at Hank, and continued, his voice choked with sincerity. I'm glad you let me into your lives. To be honest, I've never experienced anything like this before, but I've never met anyone I feel as comfortable with as I do with you two. He ran his hand over his face, as if trying to hide his emotion, but the soft smile betrayed what he was feeling. The silence that followed was not empty, it was full of meaning. Hank squeezed his shoulder again. I held his hand tightly, and in that moment it became clear that this was no longer just an experience, it was the beginning of something bigger. Suddenly, the sound of the fishing rod stretching cut through the air. Hank's hook had caught a big fish. The tip of the rod bent almost to the water, the nylon vibrating strongly. Hank stood up quickly, pulling firmly. Look at that, he said, surprised. Jack and I laughed, the tension melting away in that instant. We rushed to help, each holding a piece of the rod, while the fish fought on the other side. Tom, excited, began to bark at the edge of the ravine, as if he were also participating. In seconds, we managed to pull the creature out, a huge dorado, glistening in the morning sunday. We stood there watching, panting, mixed between laughter and surprise. The excitement of the confession had given way to the simple euphoria of fishing. It was as if life had made a point of reminding us that, despite everything that was blossoming between us, we were still just three guys sharing a morning by the river. The dorado glistened on the ground, thrashing against the wet grass, while we laughed like kids. Hank proudly raised his rod as if it were a trophy. Jack grabbed the bottle of whiskey, opened it, and raised it in the air. This calls for a toast. We passed the bottle from hand to hand, each taking a generous swig. The liquid burned our throats, but went down smoothly, carried by the laughter that had already taken over the group. We sat on the edge of the ravine with the bottle in the middle, Tom lying nearby, as part of the celebration. The sun reflected on the water, the fish still glistening as proof of our conquest. And the three of us toasted not only the fish, but the moment, the company, what we had experienced together, and what was beginning to blossom there, simple and powerful. Each sip elicited more laughter, and the camaraderie seemed to grow with every glance exchanged. The sun was already high when we got home, bringing the fish still fresh, its golden scales reflecting the light. We went straight into the kitchen, left the rods in a corner, and went to take care of the morning's trophy. Hank placed the fish on the stainless steel sink, which soon became wet and splattered with scales. I held the knife and ran it firmly across the body. The scales came loose and hit the sink with a dry, crackling sound. Jack, standing beside me, carefully opened the fish, removing what he needed and washing the inside. The running water washed everything away, leaving the flesh clean and clear. The fresh smell filled the room. Our hands worked in unison, Hank holding it steady, me scraping and cutting, Jack rinsing and arranging it on the platter. When we were done, the fillets were ready, glistening in the kitchen light, waiting to be seasoned. After that, we each went to the bathroom. The shower was almost a relief, the warm water falling and washing away the heat of the sun, the dust from the road, and the smell of the river. We came out refreshed, crossing the hallway with towels around our waists, laughing as if we were still on the edge of the ravine. Soon we were dressed simply light shorts, loose t-shirts. Back in the kitchen, we started preparing lunch. Hank took charge of the seasoning, rubbing the steaks with lemon, crushed garlic, and coarse salt, finishing with fresh herbs. Jack chopped onions and tomatoes, stirring the pots, tasting from time to time and smiling. I set the table, arranging plates, glasses, and cutlery, preparing the space for what would soon become a full meal. The sound of garlic and onions sautéing in olive oil filled the kitchen, releasing a delicious aroma. Soon the fish sizzled as it touched the hot pan, spreading that striking and appetizing smell in the air. The whole house seemed to come alive with this mixture of sounds and aromas, while the three of us worked together, laughing, exchanging knowing glances, and sharing tasks as if it were routine. For a moment I stopped and watched the scene. The three of us in the kitchen, each playing our role, and it seemed perfect, as if we had known each other in past lives. A few months ago, I couldn't even imagine anyone else between Hank and me, and at that moment, it already felt natural. Hank noticed my smile, came over, hugged me around the waist, and said, "What is it, love?" I replied, still smiling. "Nothing. I was just thinking. The three of us together, we make a beautiful threesome." He smiled, turned his gaze to Jack distracted, stirring the pot and commented, "He's beautiful, isn't he?" "Yes, he's beautiful," I said. Hank then turned his face to me and added, "But you're more beautiful." We kissed slowly, tenderly, and I said, "I love you to the moon and back." He joked, "Just one way?" I smiled, "There and back." He wanna be one to straight degrees, the tentative alive, and the might of a love. He kissed me again and replied, "I love you from here to the moon too, there and back." At that moment, Jack interrupted us from the stove, laughing. "Hey, you cute little bear couple, help me out here." Soon the last pot was on the table. The smell filled the kitchen. Fresh fish, golden in olive oil with garlic and herbs, accompanied by fluffy rice and a colorful salad. Hank brought a jug of juice and some glasses, and I finished by adding the still warm bread we had bought earlier. The three of us sat down together, side by side, and for a few seconds we just sat in silence, savoring the aroma that filled the room. Jack raised his fork, winked at us, and said playfully, "I'm warning you. If it's bad, it's your fault." We burst out laughing, and then we started to eat. The fish was cooked to perfection, tender on the inside, and with that fresh taste of something that had just come out of the river. Between bites, the teasing began. Hank said he was the one who caught it. I reminded him that I was the one who helped hold the rod, and Jack took the opportunity to make fun of both of us, saying that if it were up to him, we'd still be fighting with the line at the edge of the ravine. The food disappeared from the plates, and with it came a pleasant feeling of routine. The sound of cutlery hitting plates, easy laughter, the feeling of being at home together. Nothing forced, nothing strange. After so much intensity, it was as if the simplicity of that lunch was the perfect glue. When we finished, we left the dishes piled in the sink for later and headed to the living room. The afternoon sun streamed through the cracks in the curtains, leaving the room warm and golden. The sofa seemed small for three big men, but that only served to bring us closer together. Jack threw himself in the middle, opening his arms. Hank settled on one side, I on the other. Soon our bodies were intertwined, my leg touching his, Hank's arm across Jack's shoulder, his head resting on my chest. The conversation started off lively, full of fishing memories and inside jokes, but gradually slowed down. The morning's fatigue, our full bellies, and the gentle afternoon heat weighed on us. Jack yawned first, but didn't try to hide it. Soon after, I also felt my eyelids drooping. In the background, Tom snored on the carpet, part of the same scene of rest. Hank's breathing became slow and deep, as did Jack's. I resisted for a few more minutes, watching their faces. So close, so serene. Then I closed my eyes, feeling the comforting weight of our collective embrace, and let myself fall asleep. There, the three of us together in the silence of the room, it was impossible not to feel that we were already more than a passing trio, we were a nest. I woke up to a soft voice calling me. "Wake up, my cute little bears. I have to go." I opened my eyes slowly and saw Jack standing, smiling at us. Hank, still half asleep, stretched out his arm and held his hand firmly, almost like a child asking for more time. "Oh no, handsome. Don't go. Stay here with us." Jack let out a low laugh, looking at us tenderly. "The invitation is tempting, but I have to go. I have work tomorrow." He went to the bedroom, packed his things quietly, and soon returned to the living room. He approached us and said goodbye affectionately. First a long kiss on me, then on Hank, and finally he bent down to pat Tom on the head, who wagged his tail happily. Jack smiled, his eyes shining, and said, "Loves of my life, take care. Kisses, kisses." With that light and striking manner, he opened the door, got into the truck, and drove away. The roar of the engine echoed until it disappeared down the road, leaving the house immersed in silence, the kind of silence that is not empty, but filled with the presence he left behind. We stood in the living room for a few seconds after the truck disappeared down the road. The sound of the engine faded until all that remained was the wind rustling through the trees and Tom's soft snoring as he lay on the rug. Jack's absence seemed to fill every corner of the house, not as a sad emptiness, but as a warm trail that still lingered. Hank came up behind me, put his arms around my waist, and rested his chin on my shoulder. The gesture was silent, heavy with affection. I held his hand, squeezing it lightly, without saying anything. We stayed like that for a while, just breathing together, until he whispered in my ear, "The house feels different, doesn't it?" I nodded, feeling the same way. It wasn't the absence of Jack that hurt, but the certainty that he had already left a mark between us. We threw ourselves on the couch again, side by side. Hank put his arm around my chest, and I rested my head on his shoulder. We stared at the open window, the afternoon sun shining through the curtain, without haste. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was proof that we didn't need to fill the space with words. It was enough to just be there, together, letting our hearts get used to the idea that maybe the two of us had already become the three of us, even if Jack wasn't there at that moment. Still lying on the sofa, Hank slowly turned his face and looked me in the eyes. There was tenderness, but also a heaviness in his gaze. "Honey, is it just me, or are you also starting to have feelings for Jack?" he asked, his voice low, almost fearful. That brought me immediate relief. I didn't want to start this conversation myself, but I needed to hear it from someone. I took a deep breath and replied, "Yes, love. I'm feeling that too." He nodded slowly, as if a weight had been lifted from his chest, and continued, "Are we doing the right thing?" I caressed his hand, which was resting on me, and said, "I don't know, love, but let's just let it happen. We just need to promise each other one thing. No one lets go of anyone's hand, okay?" Hank squeezed my hand firmly, his eyes moist with emotion, and replied without hesitation, "I promise, love. No one lets go of anyone's hand." We kissed right there, a slow kiss, full of truth, like a silent pact. And at that moment, it didn't matter what lay ahead. We were together, steadfast, ready to live whatever life threw our way. That night, after our conversation on the couch, Hank and I were lying in bed, each with our cell phones in hand. We already missed Jack, even though he had left home just a few hours earlier. I picked up my phone and said, "Honey, I'm going to create a group here. That way, the three of us can talk together, without having to send messages to just one person at a time." I opened the app, created the group, chose a photo of us hugging by the river, and named it Bear Nest. Then I added Jack. Soon his first message arrived. "I love it. Now my two bears are always with me." Hank replied with a photo of Tom sleeping on his back on the carpet, and I sent a heart emoji. The conversation continued light-heartedly, full of jokes and affectionate teasing, until we let sleep overcome us. We put our cell phones on the nightstand, hugged each other, and fell asleep with the comforting feeling that, Even though he was far away, Jack was still there with us. During the week, the Bear Nest group became our daily meeting place. It was almost always Jack who started the conversation early in the morning. "Good morning, my beautiful bears." Hank and I replied immediately, one with a photo of a steaming coffee mug, the other with Tom lying lazily on the carpet. Jack's replies were full of heart emojis, laughter, or cheeky comments, but always with that sweet tone that was so characteristic of him. In the afternoon, between breaks, we exchanged simple photos of the day. A landscape from the road, the sunset seen from the window, a makeshift meal. Jack always commented affectionately, making it clear that he was thinking of us. At night, before going to sleep, there was always one last exchange. "Good night, my lovelies," Jack would say. I would reply with something light, sometimes just an emoji, and Hank would add, "Good night, handsome. Sleep with us in your thoughts," he stated. So, between photos, short audio messages, jokes, subtle teasing, and lots of affection, the week passed with the feeling that the Bear's Nest was no longer just a group on our phones. It was a space where the three of us could be together, even though we were far apart. When the weekend arrived, Hank and I were excited. On Saturday morning, in the Bear's Nest group, I sent a message. "Hey, handsome, want to spend the day with us? We're going to have a barbecue, open a bottle of wine, and chill out here at home." Hank quickly added an emoji of meat on the grill, and another of a wine glass. It took Jack a few minutes to reply, and when the notification popped up, you could tell he was feeling awkward. "My bears, I really wanted to, but this weekend isn't going to work out. I'll have to work tonight because of an event happening in town. I'm on call and couldn't get out of it." At that moment I felt a pang of frustration. Hank sighed and replied, "Ah, what a shame, handsome. We were already getting the place ready here." I wrote back immediately, "But it's okay, work is work. Just knowing that you wanted to be here is enough." Jack sent an audio message, and his voice had that sincere tone, almost too affectionate to be casual. "I really wanted to. I thought about you guys all day, but I promise that on my next day off, I'll come, even if it's just to sleep cuddled up with you two." Hank smiled when he heard the audio and pulled me into a side hug. Despite missing him, the mood between us was light, with the certainty that it wasn't a no, just a not today. Hank and I decided not to stand still. Since we weren't going to see Jack right away, we walked around the venue, enjoying the atmosphere. We grabbed 2 cold beers at the first bar we found, toasted with smiles, and took our first sips. The music on stage was good, lively, and made you want to let loose. Couples danced close together, friends laughed and hugged, and the air had that smell of barbecue mixed with market sweets. "I was missing this," said Hank, putting his arm around my shoulders. "We live so isolated in the mountains that we forget how good it is to be in the middle of the chaos." I laughed in agreement. We spent some time watching the band play, tapping our feet to the rhythm, until Hank pulled me close, and we started moving to the music, like 2 kids enjoying the night. Then we walked among the tents, sampling skewers and laughing at each other as we got sauce on our chins. The atmosphere was lighthearted and fun, and even though Jack wasn't around yet, it was impossible not to think about him. With every face that passed by, every staff uniform that crossed our path, my heart skipped a beat, hoping it was him. The night went on, and even without seeing Jack, Hank and I let ourselves get carried away by the atmosphere of the event. We drank, danced together, laughed at each other's jokes, and tried different foods at the stalls. There was a moment when we stood near the stage, hugging, singing the chorus of a familiar song, and I realized how long it had been since we had had so much fun, without a care in the world. Hank's gaze was light, full of sparkle, and that made me happy in a simple, almost forgotten way. Even without Jack there, the night was special. And maybe that's exactly why it was so important. It was proof that Hank and I were still strong, living our us, which was the foundation of everything. Jack was incredible. He had affected us. But the foundation was still our love. It was late when we decided to leave. We got in the truck and headed for the city exit. But, unfortunately for us, there was a police checkpoint just ahead. 3 cars with flashing lights, sirens on, police officers in position. At that moment, my heart raced. We had been drinking, and there was no way to hide our nervousness. As we approached, one of the officers signaled for us to pull over. Hank obeyed, pulled the brake, and slowly parked on the shoulder. The officer came straight over, asked for our documents, and Hank handed them over without protest. After taking a look, the man said firmly, "Get out of the vehicle." Hank got out, and I followed right behind him. The officer began asking questions, straight to the point. If we had been drinking, where we were coming from, and then he said, "We're going to have to do a breathalyzer test." He walked over to his car, and Hank turned to me, his expression heavy. "Shit, handsome. This is bad." I touched his arm, trying to calm him down. "Calm down, love. Everything will be fine." At that moment, another officer approached. When I looked closely, I almost couldn't believe it. It was Jack. He gave a half smile and said, as if meeting old acquaintances in the most unlikely place, "Look who at Island. Are you lost around here?" Hank and I smiled awkwardly. "Yeah, we were at the event." Jack looked at his colleague and said firmly, leaving no room for doubt, "They're my friends. Leave it to me." The officer handed the breathalyzer to Jack and walked away to his patrol car. Jack then approached us and asked in a low voice, "Have you been drinking?" "Yes," we replied almost simultaneously. He took a deep breath, looked around, and said in a decisive tone, "Okay, I'm at the end of my shift. I'll walk you home." We got back in the truck, still nervous, but trusting him. Jack spoke briefly with the other officer, then got into one of the patrol cars. As soon as we pulled away, he followed behind, escorting us down the road until we got home. The sense of relief was so great that when we parked, it felt like the entire weight of the night had been left behind at the edge of town. We entered the house, our hearts still racing from the police checkpoint. Jack followed us in, closed the door, and stood still for a moment. His uniform was impeccable, gun at his waist, beret adjusted on his head, and that mischievous smile that gave away everything he was feeling. He approached slowly, his voice low and affectionate. "Come here. I missed you, my beautiful bears." He pulled us into a tight hug, kissing first my mouth, then Hank's, leaving no space between us. In the same impulse, he led us to the sofa, side by side, with that smile that mixed affection and longing. We exchanged glances, laughed softly, and the room seemed to get smaller because it was so cozy. The mood grew, like embers turning into fire. When the tension became sweet and inevitable, we surrendered without haste, just presence and truth. Then, in a comfortable silence, we stayed in each other's arms, breathing together, feeling that this said much more than any words could. At some point, Jack calmly adjusted his uniform shirt, belt, beret, everything in place, and carefully gathered his equipment, like someone returning to duty but leaving a little bit of himself behind. He approached us with a smile, hugged us again, and said, "I'll be back tomorrow. I'll come here so we can watch a movie together." Hank and I exchanged a knowing look. I replied, "We'll be waiting, handsome." Outside, the police car was waiting for him. Jack got in, started the engine, and the lights reflected discreetly on the facade before he drove off down the road. We closed the door and walked to the bedroom in silence, grateful and serene. We lay down, and Hank whispered, with a tired and happy smile, "Love, what a night, huh?" "What a night it was," I replied, before sleep found us in a tight embrace. "I love you. I love you too." The morning arrived softly. The sun came in through the crack in the window, and Hank's warmth still clinging to me said it all. We lay there quietly for a while, exchanging affection, and then we went to the kitchen. The smell of coffee filled the house as he prepared our breakfast. We talked about the night before, laughed at the memories, and felt even more united. We opened the windows to the fresh mountain air and let the day begin. It was simple, but special. The road, the mountain, chance, everything had brought us there. I understood that there is no single formula for love. Love can be born in the noise of a gas station, strengthened in the routine of a house in the mountains, and opened up to welcome someone new without losing what already existed. Love is flexible, alive, multiple. Looking at Hank and remembering Jack, I realized that we didn't fit into labels. It wasn't just passion, nor just companionship. It was the sum of everything: choice, commitment, and trust. I discovered that love can be two. It can be three. What matters is being true and not letting go of the hand of those who walk beside us. And so, simply and intensely, We continued, living our love, our way. But that's only part of our story. I'll be back later to tell you what happened after that morning. Don't forget to check out the uncut version in the comments. Kisses and see you soon.